Welcome to our eighth live broadcast. And to all our friends from the Green Doctor Network, Simcoe Holistic Health, and WeedWell's, welcome. To all others in our audience, we're happy that you have joined us. And for those of you who joined us in our last session, you may recall an internet service interruption that Doug was quick on his feet to recover by way of cell phone and tethering to his tablet. Although Paul and I managed to keep the session going more or less, it sure was nice to have Doug rejoin us and give us his perspective on our topic for that session. And also happy to report that the internet service provider managed to repair things in a timely manner, and that Doug has been smiling ever since. The topic for last week, for those of you who were with us, was Be Clear, where the discussion evolved around having clients take a close look at where they are today in their health and wellness. And we refer this as a health selfie. And that this would serve as a valuable baseline and a measuring stick as health goals are being set. The topic for this session is Be Aware, which is all about bringing clarity to those who may have been skeptical about medical cannabis information that is available online and how it may or may not relate to their needs. So this session is part of a series of events focused on adding clarity regarding cannabis as a treatment option and whether or not it's right for you by providing answers to questions that you may have. Our goal is to conduct these sessions in a way that will help you make informed decisions with respect to improving your quality of life. My name is Mark Tremblay, a founding member of Simcoe Holistic Health and WeedWell's. I want to share with you how I became involved with cannabis as a medicine. First, as a teenager, I did sample marijuana, but quickly concluded it just wasn't for me. I will admit that I did find myself judging those who did consume marijuana, thinking their sole motive was to get high. It wasn't until many years later that I discovered the true medical benefits of marijuana. You see, a loved one was diagnosed with MS after many months of symptom manifestation, resulting in sleepless nights. I witnessed firsthand how cannabis can help alleviate symptoms and improve sleep. My eyes were open, my interest level further increased. Simcoe Holistic Health opened its doors in 2013, and since then has operated under 4 Health Canada regulations and served nearly 6,000 patients, ranging from ages 3 to 93. I have personally witnessed countless individuals and families experience improved quality of life. Having said that, I have also observed that cannabis treatment is just not for everyone. For that reason, I want to caution our listeners that cannabis treatment is not a one-size-fits-all. Determining if cannabis is an appropriate treatment requires the attention, care, and focus of your healthcare team. At WeedWell, we are committed to helping people improve their quality of life, and utilizing cannabis as a treatment option is one way to accomplish that. So joining me tonight are my colleagues, Paul Calori and Doug Rawson. As paramedics, they both come with a strong medical background, as well as a depth and wealth of knowledge regarding cannabis as a plant, cannabis as a medicine, and cannabis as an effective tool to help patients achieve their health goals. I'm also happy to announce that we have a special guest who will be joining us tonight as well, and we will refer to him as Joe. Joe first came to us early part of 2016 and has been a patient at Simcoe Holistic Health, now WeedWell, ever since. He will share a little, about his journey and how cannabis has played a role in improving his quality of life. So Joe, welcome.
Thank you, guys.
It's good to see you again, Joe.
Good to see you guys.
This is our first, and we know the value of a patient's story and testimony. Listeners sometimes is what they need to kind of get them over maybe a stigma that's associated. So real patient stories are very, very effective. So as our first, Joe, I couldn't think of a better candidate than yourself to fill that job tonight. So Joe,
Thanks
why
for inviting me.
and I greatly appreciate that. It takes some courage, I think, to really dig deep down and share, our personal stories. And I and the team really greatly appreciate that. So Joe, I thank you again on behalf of the team for joining us. And why don't we start by sharing a little bit about yourself and how things were like prior to the introduction to cannabis, and then we'll follow that with how things were like after treating with cannabis. So if you don't mind, Joe.
Thank you very much, Mark, and hi, Doug and Paul. Hope you guys are all doing well.
Hey, Joe. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for inviting me. So yes, it's been a journey for me. I've been educating myself on the benefits of medical cannabis, as Mark said, for over 4 years now, and these guys really helped put me back on track. I served in the Canadian Forces for 23 years. Unfortunately, towards the last 8 or 10 years of my career, there was several incidents that significant emotional events, let's call them that, which I tended to bury because good soldier always soldiers on. And that coupled with my youngest fella was diagnosed with leukemia, underwent 4 years of treatment. I call that hell because it was hell for us and for him. And then on top of that, I witnessed a passing of a coworker, friend, and a gentleman who I truly respected. And that was the final straw that kind of set me over the edge. I didn't realize that I was having psychological issues, and it became a depression, a deep depression, which then became post-traumatic stress. So I was in this pit, I guess you could call it, of darkness and looking for a way out. I was lucky enough to find some counseling with Psychology by the Bay, and Dr. Wanda Towers has helped me a lot. But what also helped me significantly was meeting up with you guys at WeedWell, speaking with Doc Sherman, and getting myself on a program that helps to alleviate some of the symptoms. If I can state one thing about post-traumatic stress, for me, it was, I guess the key word is amplification. Everything I felt was amplified. Everything I transmitted was amplified. I couldn't get my thoughts to slow down, constantly running mind, no peace. And as I say, I was in quite a dark place at one time. But medical cannabis has slowly helped me to, well, I guess slowly is actually the key word. It slowed everything down for me a little bit, enough that I could start to separate the issues and start to deal with those through psychology sessions as well. But the 1-2 punch of counseling and cannabis has put me back on track. It's taken me several years, but I have found that I'm more able to control my emotions. And it's had a very beneficial effect on my family as well, because I had some rough moments there with several individuals in my family, losing relationships and then trying to regain them and so on. Very painful, very difficult to go through. But when you've got a psychological or a mental problem, for the first time, you don't know you're sick, and it's hard to deal with something you don't understand. So it's been a journey for me, as I say, and the guys at WeedWell have been fantastic, and I really, hats off to you guys. Thank you so much for helping me, and Doc Sherman as well.
So Joe, thank you for sharing that. So what I'm hearing, Joe, is that it's been a process, as you are saying, and it's not just cannabis that came as a miracle solution. It was a combination. So in the clinic, we call that just one more tool in the toolbox to help patients along with some other therapies.
That's a good way to describe it. That's a good way to describe it. My doc used to say, this is another tool that you can use to try and help you cope with the daily stresses, anxieties, and so on. So I agree completely.
Anything there from Paul or Doug?
Joe, I always appreciated hearing your stories, and every time I hear it or I get to hear you share your story, I always learn something new. So, I know and knew you had some stressors and things that were affecting you and you're dealing with. But again, tonight I learned another one. I went, oh my God, like just when I thought you had a few things, tonight I learned you had a few more things on top of that. So, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that with us as well. It's a spot of vulnerability, but I think other people see that and they go, hey, that's real. And I think you're helping people by sharing your story. Joe, but the work and the thanks is all to you. You're the one that's come into this with an open mind. You're the one that's sought the information. You're the one that sought an improved quality of life, and you're the one that did the hard work. If anyone gets the thanks, it's you. You did it. You did everything, honestly. So, thanks.
Well, I'm grateful to you guys too for putting me on track.
Paul, you may have a question, or comment, but just a quick one, Mark. I'm getting some comments coming in that some people actually want to join our panel. Unfortunately, it's a pre-scheduled thing. We had spoke to Joe already, so we don't have a forum or a method that people can join our forum. But if people are interested, do reach out to us. The best way is at info@weedwell.com. We will schedule some time and have a conversation. But this isn't an open forum where we'll have other people connect. If you have questions or something you'd like to pose or you'd like to know, just put it in the chat screen and we can direct that to any one of us. And if Joe's comfortable, you'd be happy to answer one as well. So again, if you want to participate in anything specific, just send us an email at info@weedwell.com. We'd be happy to address that for you.
So, Joe, when I hear you speaking and telling your story, I can't help but get the impression that you're speaking about someone else, someone that you know perhaps, and sharing their story. Because when I see you in front of us here, it doesn't seem like the same guy that you described. And I really applaud you for all that you have gone through. And I'm sure that, there's things that have not been mentioned that, were somewhat of an uphill climb as well and contributing to the overall. But, to stay the course and take some action and putting some responsibility on yourself as well, and knowing that it's not going to all happen overnight, that it's going to be a process, is an amazing approach that we can really build on in our clinic and really share that with others. But our listeners hearing that as well, because we try to tell them this is not a miracle cure where you take it today, like going through the drive-through and you fill your belly right away and you're good for a while. In many cases, in most cases, it is a process. So you've done a fabulous job in going through that process and staying with the program. So now, Joe, if you wouldn't mind sharing, so you kind of gave us, how this all became, and then starting with cannabis. But tell us a little bit about how your life has changed and been impacted in your overall health condition since, an ongoing treatment with cannabis.
Sure, Mark. I guess the biggest thing that I've noticed is the rate I think things at, if that makes any sense, the speed. I used to be very scattered, very unfocused, a lot of anxiety, a lot of paranoia. Now I find my mind is a lot quieter. I'm able to, isolate certain situations. I still deal with a lot of relationship things. My relationships are still quite a challenge for me. As I say, because the amplification factor, I tend to amplify how I feel, and I get an amplified return of emotions from whoever I'm talking to as well. So it takes me, it's quite a challenge for me to get there. But I am getting much better. It has taken a lot of years, like as I say, a lot of counseling. I think my family is a lot happier to be around me, which is a big change from before. They're not, expecting an explosion over nothing, which I couldn't control at one point. I think that I have a lot more heart-to-heart talks with family members that I wasn't able to do. It was bad. It was so bad at one point that I was afraid to step outside my own front door and go and get the mail, And now I'm able to, like just today, I went for a ride on a motorcycle, get it ready to put away. My wife and I are looking at buying a boat. Like these are all things that were beyond my capabilities when I was at the depth of my depression and PTSD and anxiety. I still have a lot of regrets, things I wish I had done differently, but I was at a point where I could no longer control what I was thinking or doing. And luckily through use of medical cannabis, which I'm still learning about, my wife has bought some CBD gummies recently, and I tried a couple because I was having some issues with sleeping, and it's actually helping me to sleep, which is great. There's a lot of beneficial factors to medical cannabis, and I think that I'm just scratching the surface on it with regards to what can help me. And I would definitely encourage people not to be driven away by the stigma. As I say, I was ex-military. There was no weed allowed where I was working, and it was kind of a weird thing for me to pursue. But I was so desperate to find some sort of solution that I did. I am very happy that I did pursue it, and now it works for me on a daily basis. And I'm able to use it when I need it, and it helps me to detach from situations that I need more time to deal with.
Joe, if you don't mind, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if we can tug a thread that you said there a minute ago, which I think would be worthy to chat about. This in my reflection was a difficult journey when you started, mainly because of supply. I recall we went with one producer and they would run out of a product, and we're trying to find something that was similar and go to another product. And this is before really oils and extracts and edibles were really available, and it was a struggle.
It was.
And when I just heard you talk about gummies, like I think today, like if you were starting today, it'd be a much different starting point than where you started in 2016, based on supply and demand, availability, and what we know.
Agreed.
And your comment about starting is half of it. You were uphill battle from the beginning because the supply couldn't meet the demand and what you needed. And I think that further compounded that, and it affected things. If you wanted to share a little bit of that, Joe.
Yeah, it was a tough go. The initial licensed producers had all kinds of problems with from recalls for mold and pesticides, and the hard part for me too was trying to figure out what strains worked better and what didn't. It was and it's still ongoing. It's still a trial and error. I do have my top 2 or 3 that I know now work well for me in the evening, and if I need something during the day, I have 1 or 2 strains that I look to during the day. But yeah, it's been a learning process, and I feel like it's an iceberg, and I'm just touching the top of it now. So there's a lot of good information there, and I think that science is also going to divulge even more as we go forward with regards to the terpenes and the other aspects of medical cannabis that can help not only your mental but your physical health as well. So you've sold me on it, boys.
Well, Joe, you make this work rewarding for our part. You sharing the story about seeing the progress is phenomenal. I just want to throw in for a sec, if anybody wants to add. We can't add anybody to the forum, so if people want to get part of our forum thing, you need to email us at info@weedwell.com. If you have a question for one of us or possibly for Joe, put it in the chat screen. I'll be sure to add it to the thread. We'll bring it up for all of us to talk about tonight, or email us and we'll talk about it at a future broadcast.
So, Joe, you talked a lot about the issues that kind of all came colliding at different times, and you got to that last one, and of course, there's a lot of things going on in your mind that you've talked about. It's going fast. What's that point that everything slows down, where cannabis is an option that becomes on the table for you? Does someone suggest it to you? Is it reading that you did? How did you come to cannabis and or WeedWell for that matter?
Well, Paul, it's to be quite honest, I think I was on antidepressants for about just over 6 years. Antidepressants are meant to be a short-term solution of a few months, 6 months, something like that. But unfortunately, in my case, I was switched from one type to another type to another type. 2 weeks to get it into your system, 2 weeks to see what the symptoms are like, 2 weeks to get it out of your system if the side effects were bad, and some of them were horrific side effects. Really changed my character, my mood, everything. And so it was a desperation, really. I remember I got out of the military and I went to see my family doctor, a new doctor, because I had been through the medical system until I got out. And he put, I went to see him. I said, "Doc, this is how I'm feeling." And what did he do? He wrote me a script for antidepressants. So when I got home that day and I looked at the script, I said, "This is it." I said, "I got to do something different because this is not working for me. And I'm going to end up at the end of a rope hanging in my garage." And that's no joke, boys. That's how bad it got. And so I called my dad and I said, "Dad, you got to help me out here. I got to go somewhere else." And he said, "Look in the, start going through the internet, start trying to find some kind of solution." And then I started reading on the medical cannabis, and that's how I got a hold of it. And I found out you guys, at the time it wasn't legal, and I was still serving with the department, so I didn't want to create any issues. It wasn't an accepted treatment at that time in 2016. I think it was 18 or so when policy started to change, 2018. So I was trying to help myself without letting the people that were helping me previously know. And luckily, my civilian doctor was able to, he did what he knew best at the time, which is prescribe more antidepressants. But I knew that was the final, push to get me to go in a different direction. And that's when I went to see Simcoe Health and found you guys.
Excellent. It's difficult. From what I read, that diagnosis of PTSD, but a lot of surveys with patients using cannabis for PTSD tend to come to it from a depression angle or an anxiety angle. It kind of sounds like that's where you were at that time. You just didn't have your finger on the PTSD diagnosis. Is that fair to say?
That's exactly right. I started feeling symptoms in 2001, and I had seen multiple doctors through the military system, and I'd seen other counselors even on my own trying to find help, but it wasn't until 2016 when I went to see you guys that I finally got a grip on it. 15 years later, the diagnosis was in 2015, I believe. So that was a lot of years of not knowing what was wrong with me, really. And if you don't know what's wrong with you, how can you treat it? So it was a rough place to start from, that's for sure. I knew it was at the bottom, and I knew I could only climb up. And so I started to do research, and that's how I ended up where I am now.
Excellent.
Joe, a question for you, if you don't mind telling me your experience. Have you noticed a change in response or a change in support by your care team, physicians, people that have treated you, with you being medicating with cannabis today compared to 2016? Did you ever get pushback, or did docs support or not support initially? And what's that response like now?
To be quite honest, Doug, I was embarrassed to go to my family doctor about it because he's an ex-military doc, and he knew I was ex-military, and it was a hard subject to bring up. "Hey, doc, what about medical cannabis?" So I didn't go that route. I went on my own to try and find the solution through Simcoe Holistic Health. But it's funny how things have changed, because my wife has now been prescribed medical cannabis, CBD in this case, via my family doctor. So his ramp up has also occurred over the last few years, and he's now prescribing it. So it wasn't the case when I was truly seeking assistance. I had to go this route. I felt it was the easiest way to go. It's amazing how acceptance is people know it's not just for, you're not just out to get high. There's a lot more to it than that. It does provide some cures, or some, how can I put it? Maybe not cures, but it buys you the time you need in order for you to address some of the problems you may have, medical or psychological. That's a great plus for me.
Joe, thanks for sharing that. And what you just said was, your family doc supporting your wife.
Yeah.
Dr. Terman's experience is very much the same, where patients like you may not have gone to him initially, but have come back and they see the success. They see the change. They see the improvement. They're like, your options are, a traditional, here's a suite of medicines, or here's another suite of treatments, and we've got this other anecdotal treatment path. And when they can see the results that you're sharing tonight, it's hard to not recognize that. It's hard not to see that. And I think, your family doctor's example that's got new perspective is part to the work you've done. And people like you sharing those stories, doctors hear that, and then they become more, they recognize that, and they salute it, and they also support it. So
Right.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I truly feel for my fellow ex-military and serving and vets, when I hear stories about, someone losing it and taking their family out and then taking themselves out, to me, that's a failure of the system. And I think that those people, had they had different options, such as psychological treatment, medical counseling, or psychological counseling or medical treatments, like via using cannabis or whatever the treatment may be, is really a lifesaver. It's too bad that it gets to the point where people are so desperate that they cannot find a solution, because there are possible solutions out there that could be pursued.
So, Joe, it's not the first time I hear your story, but similar to what Doug says, is like, wow. Even this time hearing it. What was really awesome to hear is when I spoke with you a few days ago about being our guest tonight, and two things. One of them is you said, I'm actually out for my walk right now, which
Yes.
what I seem to recall from a previous conversation, just going out for a walk was almost impossible for you.
Yes.
So that was huge. And the other one was that, our plan this weekend is to go out looking for a boat because you want to be able to bring your grandkids out there and have, some good quality time with them. So to me, that says it all. But, I'd like to hear it from you, in your own words, how it's really changed your life and the life and the impact that this has had on others that are near and dear to you.
Well, Mark, let me be blunt. I got to the point where there was nobody around me anymore. People did not want to be around me. They knew I could explode at any time and into angry episodes. My thought process was all messed up, and I don't know. It's just the best way I can explain it, I guess, is like when you finally grab the end of a rope and you know that you got a chance to make it out of the water, and you're trying to pull yourself out. That's what this process has been like. And yes, being able to I got to the point where I couldn't go to the mailbox, and now I am planning to have family out and take my grandkids, or fishing and tubing and things like that. Things that I used to do way back before I got really sick. And sort of, I guess it comes down to trying to find out or get a grip on who I was before, if that makes any sense, before all the trauma happened and I felt all the repercussions, trying to get back to who I was. Mm-hmm. And I think I mentioned to you before that once the cheese slips off your cracker, it's really hard to keep it on there. You got to work on it every day.
I love that analogy, Joe.
Yeah.
Joe, do you find in your treatment there's still a lot of trial and error, or if you really honed in? I know you didn't have it right away, mostly because of the licensed producers, not your doing. But as time has gone on and products been available, have you been really able to hone in? I need this at this time of day, or that at that time of day.
I've gotten much better. I'm able to I have to be careful. For example, with the sativas. The sativas during the day, they're good because I'm fairly alert. Like, first of all, I don't smoke and drive or any of that crazy stuff. I stay within the law. But if I'm working around the yard or whatever and it's daytime, I will partake of some sativa just to take the edge off and help me to focus. But I do find some sativas make me overthink things. So I start thinking about the past. I have flashbacks, things like that. So I have to be careful on the sativas, and I've only found that out in the last 2 or 3 months, because I found the indicas are good for relaxing you, calming you down. If you want to sleep better, those kind of things. It even helps with some pain. But if you need to think, you need something that is a little more clear. And I guess the hybrids come in there as well. So I continue to experiment, Paul.
Yep.
Can I find what I need? 70 to 80% of the time, yes. I've split my medical entitlement between 2 LPs. So when one doesn't have a particular strain, I'm able to find something with another. But it's still a lot of experimentation and learning for me, even at this point, even 4 years down the road.
Excellent.
So, Joe, we've touched briefly on stigma from colleagues, perhaps even those that are in your healthcare circle, and most likely in your family, friends, family members, that sort of thing. How is that looking today? Like for those that are even closer to you, has that changed at all?
For my immediate family, it's not, to be honest, it's not something I share with everybody. I still feel that, like I grew up in the era of, cannabis being illegal. And with my career field, I mean, it was a non-starter. So I still feel some of that stigma, even though I know that I have a prescription, even though I know it's legal, even though I know it's medication that I require in order to get through the day. I still try to keep it fairly private, confidential. However, my family members around me, they all know, and they all appreciate that it does, in fact, help me. It does calm me down. It does relax me. It does help me to plug into the family and plug into society a lot smoother, with a lot less tension and anxiety and overthinking things. Those kind of benefits.
Yeah. So, Joe, you may have heard us say earlier on that patients in 2016 are getting a better experience than in 2015 with us because we're learning. We're learning from the research. We're learning from colleagues providing information. And very importantly, we learn from patients because they come back and report how it may be working or perhaps not working. So we build on that. And I will say that today, patients are getting better care and treatment from WeedWell than even last year. And one way that we are doing this, this is probably new to you, but it's our 5-day challenge. So the next one is actually starting on November 30th. This is a 5-step in 5 days to improve your quality of life while considering cannabis to see if it's right for you. We're confident that lessons will bring clarity and allow you to make some important decisions regarding your health and wellness goals. For example, on the first day, you will learn about factors that affect your mental, social, and physical well-being and how they are interrelated and impact many facets of your life. And then on the second day, we will help you set some SMART goals whereby all future actions, treatments, and therapies can be measured against. On the third day, patients will learn about their methods of cannabis consumption and compare costs for each method. This will bring clarity on what method or methods that are best suited for the individual. And then on the fourth day, we will provide keys to help clients custom design their treatment plan while considering the impact, whether it be positive or negative, on their current medications. And then on the last day, we will provide tools that will add clarity to a client's treatment progress and assist the client in making informed decisions about the appropriateness of the treatment. So although there's no fee for this challenge, you will need to invest about 30 minutes of your time each day for 5 consecutive days. And as you see at the bottom, you could register at weedwell.solution.
Joe, you brought up an interesting point with your trialing of strains, and you were talking indica sativa, and that's a wonderful way to look at it. We at the clinic typically talk CBD, THC, and there's nothing wrong. You know, our method isn't better than yours, and vice versa. It's all about, and it sounds like you've really honed on this, listening to your body and what it's telling you. What you did mention, though, and what we see often is there's kind of a middle area where dosing is correct. Whether you're using the sativa example or THC with the PTSD, too little is just not going to do a whole lot. But too much, those fast thoughts go faster. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. So I assume over time you've found I can only do so much during the day as well as strain, but how much you're using during the day to hone in on that sweet spot. Is that how it went for you?
Yes, exactly. In fact, I've experienced the, having a little too much. I guess it's sort of like a bell curve, right?
Yep.
You sort of reach the peak where it's perfect. And then if you overdo it, you're not going to feel well. You're going to feel the anxiety may come back. In my case, it does. Overthinking things come back. A bit of paranoia comes back. You don't want to be in that range. You got to find that window between where you're comfortable, where it's comfortable for you. So I agree, Paul. Dosage is also something I'm still working on, but too much is not good. Too little is not good.
Yep.
So you got to find the sweet spot to try and you guys help with a lot of that, right?
Yep.
Suggesting strains and so on. That you guys have done.
We, as Mark pointed out, have the research, and the research suggests the bell curve approach, just as you said. But hearing yourself and other patients go through, that's just information that goes up here that we share with the next Joe, right? That listen, take your and we always start low, go slow, right? As one of the mantras, and this is why you really just want to inch yourself up. You know, in
Right.
your case, you've been months and months of antidepressants. A few more weeks and figuring out that right dose, that's time well taken.
It sure is.
As
It's
opposed
time
to
well
having a negative experience right off the get-go.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Joe, I'm wondering if you would mind sharing a little experience or question, like a response for me. You've kind of sampled different methods of consumption. You know, like I started a while ago. You started before, like oils were just kind of starting, and we're trying to find a stable supply. So you've kind of, you know, had some experience with dry forms. You've had some experience with some extracted forms. You talked about gummies a minute ago. We've been doing a lot of work with clients talking about some benefits of consuming and what ways are available. We've been going deep on the information available we're providing on sublingually versus topical versus vaporizing. But I think it'd be helpful if you would share kind of your experience, like what's worked, what hasn't worked, what didn't you like, what was awkward with it. I remember some issues with vaping back, but maybe if you could just tell in your own words, and people can kind of draw their own conclusion from that, if you don't mind.
Sure. So having been a cigarette smoker for, I quit in 2016, but it's been, I was 24 years. So I was, my first method was to roll it up and light it, combust it and smoke it that way, which was okay for a while. Cause as I say, I was dealing with I had other things to deal with other than worrying about my lungs. But as things progressed, I realized there's got to be another way, because your lungs can only take so much, and mine have taken plenty. So now I'm starting to reach out and explore some of the other methods. I did get a vaporizer. In fact, I've tried a couple of tabletop method and a handheld, and both work well. I find it's a little bit of a different effect than combusting it, but also effective and a lot easier on your lungs. So it is an option that I am trying to lean more towards. The gummies and the edibles, I'm just starting to really dabble in that right now. I know that it's, I think Canada's regulations basically limits 10 milligrams per gummy. So getting back to what Paul was saying about dosage, for me now, I figured out that I need at least 2 to 3 in order to actually have any beneficial effects from the gummies. And as I say, the CBD type are sort of helping me to get through a night's sleep, because I was lucky to be getting 4 to 5 hours before I started all this process. And now I'm getting 6 to 7, some nights even 8. So I attribute that directly to cannabis use. I'll save my death bubbas and some of the heavier indicas for late at night, when I realized, okay, now I can disconnect from my day. I can slow my thoughts down for good for the day, relax, and go that route. But yeah, there's I'm interested in the spray and the sublingual tabs, and there's all kinds of stuff coming out now. Because consuming gummies, you're also consuming sugar, sometimes coconut oil, all these different types of products. So again, you're introducing something else to your body, and if there's a way to get the medication in without having to go that route, then it's worth pursuing. So still investigating that side of it.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Just to add what you said, Joe, like there's so many ways, and what's right this time might be a little different next time. But like you identified, you have a few different tools in the toolbox, and you've been able to experiment and try some different things. We've done some work on this. So at our website, we have weedwell.co/4waysmj. We have a blog article that Paul spruced up for us slightly, and the rest of our team has done a fabulous job on. I'm pretty proud of it. So we have a detailed blog article about it. We've also got it prepared as an infographic. So if you want to see a neat one-page picture about the benefits of topical versus sublingual, you can see that. We also have available as a slideshow and now a video, and our podcast is on there. So if you want more information on the 4 different methods to consume, do check that out.
Very cool.
So Joe, I know I'm speaking on behalf of Doug and Paul here, but we're so enjoying this conversation, seeing how you're doing today and hearing the story and everything that you've had to share. And I know that without a doubt, all of our listeners would echo what I've just said as well. So for that, we are all very, very grateful. I want to be respectful and mindful of your time. I remember you saying in a conversation that you had some moving parts, that you would squeeze some time in there for us. So we greatly appreciate that, but also want to be respectful and mindful of your time.
Thank you very much, Mark. If I can just leave with one last remark to whoever's watching is, be not afraid. Go out, ask questions, go and see the guys at WeedWell. Find out if they can do something for you. And in my guess, I think they will be able to, because they sure helped me. So thanks, guys. That's why I'm here, is because you guys helped me. I appreciate it very much.
So Joe, if you don't mind, before signing off, and as a veteran, November, being Remembrance Day, because we're together now, I'd like to just have a moment of silence now before you go, if that's okay.
That'd be great.
And is there anything that you'd like to add or to this?
Just to the folks that I've served with, to the folks that didn't come back, to their families, be well.
Joe, thank you. Thank you for serving, Joe, and for everything you've done.
Thank you guys very much. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Joe.
Good night.
So Doug, Paul, any closing comments before I I close officially.
Well, I just think Joe's story is phenomenal. I remember Joe from day one. I've spent a lot of time with Joe, and I think he's given us more credit than's deserved because all the work was done by Joe. We gave him a roadmap, and we kind of oriented where's north on the map, but Joe did the work, and we take for granted what the situation's like today, meaning supply and demand and access and everything else, but I'll tell you, he told us where he was at personally, and it was a really difficult time. Access didn't make it any easier for him. It was really, really difficult. And like we said, he shared some things that I learned more today, and I sense Joe's more open. He told us tonight that he's kind of the guy that doesn't want to share everything. I suspect if we were doing these 4 years ago, he wouldn't have offered to participate. And, as our relationships build and as we grow, and he's becoming more confident where he's at, he's sharing more. And I think that's why we're learning more. I think it's great.
The before and after story stands for itself. It's quite a contrast. It's quite a change. And what I say is not to minimize any of that. But what I really enjoyed was asking him about the little in-between steps, the how-to, where a person could be sitting at home right now, kind of in that same dark place, and they're asking themselves, how do I? How can I? What should I do? And he mentioned about taking a leap, or be not afraid, I think was another quote that he used. And if that's something that, if you're sitting at home in that dark place, be not afraid, reach out. As he mentioned, for that rope that's pulling you in from the water. Again.
Yeah, good point, Paul. And I really like how, I think you tease this out of him as well, about the other supports and the other care team. He talked about his family, he talked about his psychological supports. We've been saying this, guys, from the beginning, this is only one tool in the toolbox, and cannabis didn't get Joe where he's at today. The biggest tool in the toolbox is Joe and Joe's support system. This is such a small piece to his success, but I think everyone's going to recognize that he took the steps, he took the work, but he used all those support systems he's got from family and other healthcare providers, and he talked about his psychological supports and treatments. There's lots involved with this, and I'm glad when you bring that out, Paul, because those are important things that we know and we hear, but hearing someone share that, someone else can draw the same conclusion, and hopefully someone sees that, recognizes that, and says, hey, that's me, and I can do that too. And that's great.
For sure. We see it as, step 1, step 2, step 3, but there's a bunch of baby steps between 1 and 2, or 2 and 3. And him sharing some of those moments, like what's going on in his mind and stuff, I thought was really powerful to the whole story as well. I was glad he did and was able to.
And really, when Joe was sharing that, he had been suffering for a huge number of years, he was wise enough to recognize that this wasn't going to simply reverse overnight. There's going to be a process. And he came to that fork in a road, and he knew what one side would do, and he chose the other side. And but he knew that he had to make that choice and take some steps. And that's when he was speaking to his father, who encouraged him to go down that path. So for any of our listeners that are perhaps in a similar situation now, I would encourage you to really closely consider what Joe has shared tonight, that if you are indeed at that fork in the road, that there is still hope and there's still a bright light at the end but it's not necessarily going to fall on your lap. Like, you need to, first of all, recognize where you're at, and you need to make that choice. And the choice is truly yours. Having said that, you won't be on your own after that. You do need the support. In his case, his dad and other family members, I'm sure, and then the medical team behind him. And we were just blessed, really, at Simcoe Holistic Health to be a small part of that and to be able to contribute in any way that we can. So for any of those listeners out there, I do encourage you, consider a similar path to what Joe has taken, and so heartfully shared with us this evening.
Mark, to add to that, as you're speaking, I'm kind of reflecting here. And I think back to, people who we've seen and we've been blessed to be part of their journey of success. And it just dawned on me, the ones that have had the most success, who are the ones that we talk about in our own little closed huddles, are the ones that advocate for their own care. And unfortunately, those that don't advocate for their own or don't have a strong support system, they tend to be marginalized in the healthcare system. And we could probably do that on another episode where we can kind of talk about marginalized populations and how we could look at bridging that gap. But just to echo what you said, Mark, about the success here was Joe advocated for himself, and he kind of brought these tools together and these systems and the support systems. And I think you're right. Like, reach out to your support and be that advocate, because, like you said, it's just not going to happen.
Totally agree.
So, guys, I think I mentioned twice a little while ago, but we have had some comments, people wanting to participate in our panel tonight. That's actually an interesting comment. But if people are interested in being part of that, do send us an email, info@weedwell.com. Again, that's info@weedwell.com. And we'll schedule some time with you to talk about that. Possibly in the future, we could talk about having some sort of a opportunity where people can call in and we can have people a part of this. But so far, we've tried to coordinate that, and Mark would schedule some time with you and talk about that. But if there are questions, again, you can send in your questions at any time. We're happy to pose them to the panel, or we can talk about them in a future episode. So if you do have a question, do post in the chat screen. We'll be happy to answer that for you.
Great. Before we sign off, and we still have a little bit of time here, but I want to remind all of our listeners that the story that was shared by Joe tonight and his journey and how things evolved over time and what has worked for him and what has not worked for him is really very specific and should not be just taken and accepted that that's the formula, because it's likely going to be different for many of our listeners. And that's why we always encourage anyone considering cannabis as a tool in the toolbox to help improve your quality of life to always speak to your healthcare provider about the appropriateness of cannabis treatment for yourself. So don't make those decisions in a isolated fashion. And as Doug said, yes, you need to be an advocate. The advocate is to take the steps, but it also means to involve or include your healthcare providers. Remember, and Joe's such a good example of this, that your journey is your journey. And as long as you're taking steps forward to improving the quality of your life, you should be very proud of the progress that you're making. And at WeedWell, we are committed to helping people improve their quality of life, and utilizing cannabis as a treatment option is one tool that can help accomplish that. So Doug, if you don't mind, there's also actually here. Yeah, so we're also streaming on YouTube and WeedWell.live. And we're happy to report, recorded podcasts are also at podcast.weedwell.com. We're also on Spotify, Amazon, and they're in tune, Apple Podcasts or Apple iTunes, whatever happens to be the one that you utilize. And as a reminder as well, questions And Doug, there may be a different website here, but the one that we had been using was any questions that you have. We do have a very valuable resource where many of your questions could be answered. WeedWell.com/questions. That is apparently now also accessible, and I love this name, WeedWell.guru. Not that we are gurus, but we thought it was a catchy name. So where you would type in your question or questions, and the system will search our entire database to find the best response to your question. I'd like to also invite everyone to join our Facebook group, where it's a great place to collaborate and communicate with others in the group. And at WeedWell, we will provide tips and solutions and answers to questions. So join our exclusive group by going to weedwell.group. Anything to add there, Doug or Paul?
You talked about our podcast, so we're starting to repurpose some of our live sessions that we're doing, and we're publishing them on podcasts. You've identified, Mark, where they're at, but I'd really appreciate if people can share that with their network, their family, their friends. We want to help get the word out. If you can leave a rating, if you can comment on our podcast, we'd appreciate it, because we take the feedback and we try to improve upon them in the future. So if you can subscribe, if you can follow and comment, we'd appreciate that. If you want to watch a previous episode that we've seen of these broadcasts, I'd ask that you would subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can see all of our previous sessions. And you can see that at weedwell.tv. So if you go to weedwell.tv, you'd be able to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And maybe before we sign off, maybe, Paul, you could go over the path with everybody.
Our signature course. The path to be well. 5 learning modules. The first module, be clear. That came up tonight at the start, based on our last podcast. And be clear is getting an idea of where you're at today. The history behind you, medically, medication-wise, and we also add in questionnaires and stuff like that, where you're able to get a medical selfie. So you know where you're at today. From there, we go to be aware. We talk about common medical conditions. Patients of ours come to seek cannabis to treat. As an example, using tonight, PTSD is in there, but there's other mental health disorders quite commonly. Cannabis is used for, and a lot of physical disorders that produce pain and things like that. They'll all be contained in that area called Be Aware. At the end of that, we are going to create a SMART goal. And we touched on this a little bit with Joe tonight, and, talking about being able to go outside. That was a goal. In previous episodes, we've talked about the person that wanted to walk to the mailbox, and that was a goal. And so whether they're big or small, we're going to come up with goals. So you start with where you are today and where you want to be. From there, we finally introduce cannabis in something called Be Informed, our third core content module. And Be Informed talks about the parts of cannabis, CBD, THC, terpenes, and the like. And the latter part of that is, how do I consume it? We touched on 4 ways tonight, and we really delve into those 4 ways. What are the benefits? What are some of the drawbacks? And that leads us into Be Progressing, where we really implement and adjust, or what we call titrate, a treatment plan that is going to match where you are, where you want to be, and this is how you're going to get there part. So Be Progressing is implementation and adjusting of your treatment plan. Finally, to Be Well, where you can compare and contrast your health journey. We look at some complementary and alternative medicines or healthcare that can help you in your path to wellness, in your journey to wellness. 54 lessons, Doug? Got to be close to that.
Oh, I just say 50 plus. Then
50 plus.
Because one day
lot-
Daniel said there's only 13 in this module. I thought you're saying 12. So say 50 plus, and we're safe.
50 plus. There's a lot of content. There's a lot of ways to look at things, you know, where you are today and where you want to be, and a lot of how to get you there, how to help you out on your journey. It is your journey, and you're going to do the work. We talked about that in the context of Joe. There's just some tools here for your toolbox to help you on that path.
Mark, you're muted. And Paul, the website for that, the course, the signature course, is thepathtobewell.com. All one word, thepathtobewell.com. Check it out. We've got a quick description of each module. Mark shot a few lesson video introductions for you, so you can go through those. If you have any questions, you can ask any questions. We'll be opening up this course in a couple of weeks. So we're looking forward to being able to help more people with that. And
so, as you heard me mention earlier when I introduced Joe, that he was actually our first patient to join us. I think my colleagues Doug and Paul would agree that tonight was really beyond informative. Really, so much valuable information. There's one thing. It's one thing to hear any one of us speak to some of these things, but when you hear the patient, it's so much more profound and gives so much more depth, and the depth that others or the listeners can really relate to. And I think we'll all agree tonight that moving forward, having a patient join us is something that we're going to certainly put effort into doing. So to our listeners, if you have found these sessions or this session to be of value, so please do share with others, and do submit your questions, as we said earlier, weedwell.guru. And we do appreciate having you. Thank you for joining us. But before we close, I'd like to give a special thanks to Joe, all of those who are currently serving in the military, and for those who have served in the past. For them, we are so grateful, and that we, along with our families, are able to enjoy the freedom in this beautiful country of ours as a result, to all of those who continue to serve and those who have served. So thank you for joining us. Your attendance and interest is so greatly valued and appreciated. We look forward to seeing you again real soon. And on behalf of myself, the team at WeedWell that you see here, the team behind the scenes, to you we say, until the next time, be well. Thank you for joining me. I'd like to take this time to share with you how I first became interested and then involved with cannabis as a medicine. My name is Mark Tremblay, a founding member of Simcoe Holistic Health, Ontario's first medical clinic dedicated to the treatment and care of those patients considering cannabis as an option. As a teenager, I did sample marijuana and quickly concluded that it simply wasn't for me. I'll admit I did find myself judging those who did consume weed, thinking that their sole motive was strictly to get high. It wasn't until many years later that I discovered the true medical benefits of marijuana. A loved one was diagnosed with MS. After many months of symptom manifestation resulting in sleepless nights, I witnessed firsthand how cannabis can help alleviate symptoms and improve sleep. My eyes were open. My interest further increased. As a result, Simcoe Holistic Health opened its doors in 2013. Since then, our clinic has operated under 4 Health Canada regulations and served nearly 6,000 patients, ranging from ages 3 to 93. I have personally witnessed countless individuals and families who experience improved quality of life. Having said that, I've also observed that cannabis treatment is simply not for everyone. As we continue to grow and expand our reach, Simcoe Holistic Health is rebranding to WeedWell. For more information, visit us at weedwell.com or follow us on our social channels. Till the next time, be well.